for me, it's about just being true and honest to where you actually sit, and not actually seeing yourself better than you are or different. Like, it's, like the results of what speak for himself, and you can't really get away from that.
No. This is the Gold Medal Mindset, where we bring you all things winning in business, sport, and life. I'm Dr. Jason Richardson, pro BMX world champion and Pan Am Games gold medalist. Now I'm a professional speaker, author, and winning mindset coach. Thanks for joining in. Get ready to mine for gold as we challenge your perception to change your results. Welcome back, people. Gold Medal Mindset. And as you know what I'm going to say, I'm super excited because I'm always super excited to have this guest on, any guest, but especially this guest, because we go back quite a bit. In BMX, they call him the King. I just call him Liam, 3-time Olympian, World Champion, World Cup Champion, Mr. Liam Phillips. Liam, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking time for your busy, I guess we're doing a bit of a rehab / training schedule, correct? We can train the lower half, but not necessarily the upper half.
Yeah. So I crashed in February, and then I sort of drew a line of when I anticipated to be back on my bike and competing. That then got pushed quite a bit further back than I'd hoped. And then everything for me off the back of the Olympics last year was about the World Championships this year in Rock Hill. I love the World Championships. I love the opportunity to race for a rainbow jersey. And, for me, that was, it's always a big target. But I think, I had a long time. I had quite a long break after the Olympics. And then I got back into training solely for one race, really. And it was the World Champs. So everything got put into that. And then... basically I wasn't able to compete, still due to injury. And then basically that has changed things quite significantly in the sense of, we then had to sort of sit back and go right back to basics as far as what that rehab program looked like. And we're still learning and trying to get to the bottom of that even now. So we're almost 6 months down the line, and things haven't been. I've been injured a lot, and this is usually I'm the one pushing the medical team to allow me to get back on my bike a lot sooner rather than later. And unfortunately this hasn't happened, but as we know, it's part of sport, certainly at elite level. And I know certainly with BMX it's the risk we take.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because the risks, well, it seems to be a bit of a learning curve, but you are one of the most outspoken riders in the sport. I guess I didn't even plan on talking about this, but it's going to come up anyway. Just hit my head. But yeah, I remember you. So people know, before every Olympic BMX event, they usually have a test event at that course a year prior, and you were one of the more outspoken riders of the group to make sure that it was safe for everyone. And that's, I'm not going to say that that's led to your new position, but you do have a new position now, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. In which, I completely agree with. I think that, again, I wasn't able to attend the World Champs in Rock Hill, where there was a vote for, an athletes commission. And I'm honoured to sort of work on behalf of the athletes to, over the next 4 years. And I think that a lot of that led from the fact that, I was happy to sort of stand up and be counted when we first went to Rio. And, I just felt like obviously I've raced BMX all my life, and, we get an opportunity to showcase that sport to the world every 4 years. And I really felt, I feel like those events, they have to be right. We get one shot to make it an impact. And in all honesty, like the track, I can't even. I still laugh about it now, because I think that when we first got to Rio, it was a shambles, to be honest. But I think above all else, I just wanted the sport and the athletes involved to have a platform to be able to showcase the sport as best they could. And the fact that we didn't have that at the time, yeah, that was the reason for me to, I just felt like as, and again, I think that as somebody that had, achieved quite a lot of success in the years previous to that, I felt like it was my role really to try and sort of protect the next generation of riders to come through, because I would never want, as an 18-year-old athlete, I wouldn't want to be stepping into a sport that was heading in such a sort of crazy and severe landscape, and I thought it was my part of my responsibility as sort of an elder athlete now, and to try and protect the sport itself and help the next generation so that they don't have to face or ride on tracks that ultimately are just substandard.
Nice. And that's so I was very proud of you when I saw that. I too was an outspoken rider back in the day.
Absolutely. And to be honest, Jason, I think that I've obviously grown up, looking at guys like yourself and Robert DeWild and guys that were happy to stand up and be counted. And I feel like over the last, since you guys sort of retired, I guess that the sport as a whole, I just don't feel like there's enough riders now that I don't know. I don't think it's that they don't care about the sport as much. I just think that, I don't know, everybody's almost interested to look after himself and sponsors, and rather than thinking, hold on, without if this sport is to go to the next level, then we need that platform to be able to showcase what we do. Otherwise, it doesn't matter about anything else.
Yeah, and it's special because being part of a lifestyle sport, there's always these growing pains when you go Olympic. And skateboarding or surfing, they don't quite, and snowboarding is probably the better example, because that industry was huge before the Olympics. They don't necessarily need it. BMX, we've had bikes in general have had, it's a big industry, bicycle manufacturing in general, but racing, and specifically BMX or even mountain biking, that has its ups and downs. So to be mindful of the fact that you want to showcase the sport and have the sport look as good as possible, and with the athlete's best interests in mind, that's always commendable. Let's press rewind a bit. I actually forgot. I was looking on your website. I actually forgot it was 3-time Olympian, because you had done so much leading up to London 2012 and then post. Because you were just really, you were the top 4-ish guy, top 3 guy, always on the podium, always in contention for a win at an international race. But Beijing was interesting because back then, I retired in 2008 from racing. So for people know, we actually rode for the same trade team long ago. So I knew Mr. Liam when he was a wee lad. How old were you when we were? Like, say 2003, 2004 when you were riding for Krupi?
I would have been like 13, 14.
So yeah. I knew of you before that, but actually sharing the same space at a race. And me and your father, we would get along. We'd always talk cars. Because he always had a nice one. He's not changed. I heard he's riding in an Aston Martin right now. That's the rumor. But I have.
Yeah, and he's just got an X5 series thing that's 700 and something brake. It's you know what it's like. He loves his cars.
Good for him.
Yeah, good.
So I had to have him on the podcast as well. How to succeed in business, right? Business, life, and sport. But let's go back to.
I think he'll just tell you it's hard work.
It's hard work, mate.
It's hard work. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's more to it than that. But yeah, so 2008, you get to Beijing, the Beijing Olympics, and that was even a wild ride as to how you got there. And then after the Beijing Olympics, it didn't go as well as you wanted to. I felt like you were the youngest, probably one of the youngest guys in the group.
Yeah.
And then
the youngest, yeah.
And then you kind of disappeared for a bit. I'm like fast tracking everybody through your history right now. you kind of disappeared for a bit. You went to track cycling, or tried out track cycling. For those who don't know, that's that's velodrome, and for Americans, that's like, think NASCAR with bicycles indoor. So, and then back on the scene in 2010, maybe 2011, and all of a sudden it was like we were talking offline. Maybe not. You weren't a different person, but you definitely were grown. Like, you went from being boy to man. It seemed overnight. What happened in those 3 years?
I'll try and summarize this as much as possible, but at the same time, I think there's some really key moments.
I love key moments.
Yeah. So I guess throughout my sort of amateur career, I'd never really won anything. I'd always been, I'd always be up there in contention, but I'd never win anything. And that's one of the things. So like now, I look at the top guys like Maris, Corbin, Sam, Joris. Everyone has been good, but nobody was like actually a winner. Everybody had to, they might have won the odd race, but they were just scrappers, and I think that they're always there and thereabouts. But anyway, as you then fast forward to Beijing, there was, as there is with all Olympic qualification, there was politics, and basically for one reason or another, basically we did qualify a spot at the Olympics, and I was 19, and there was another rider that was 29, so he was right. He'd made it sort of common knowledge that it would be his last race if he was to have raced at the Olympics. And basically, we had a trial race, and that got a little bit sort of heated, or and there was a lot of stuff that was said. But basically, the reason that I touch on all of that is that I went to Beijing, and to be honest, I probably wasn't even in the top. I don't know. I'd be lucky if I was in the top 100 in the world. Like, I wasn't expecting to go to the Olympics and like do any good. However, I felt really, really strongly that would be, key for my development, certainly to gain success at a future Olympics. So anyway, I won that trial and went to the Olympics, and basically fast forward, I basically looked at the next 4 years. Like, obviously it was a home Olympics, and there was, that for me was like, that was where I wanted success, basically. And I felt like over that 4-year cycle, I had sort of 5 steps to make. And if I was to have taken just one step at a time, then, or like made one step each year, then I would have fallen short. So we made a decision really early on that I would sacrifice basically that 2009, even the 2010 years, really, to just build a bigger engine. I needed to be bigger. I needed to be stronger in order to compete with the best guys in the world. And then I did all of that. Made my first podium at a World Cup in 2010, and then basically I got injured. I'd had an amazing off season from 2010 to 2011, like amazing off season, and got way stronger. And it was like seamless. Didn't have any injuries, nothing. It was perfect. And then basically the first race of the year was in Altamar in Florida, and I crashed and injured my hand and elbow and my wrist really bad. And basically, I flew home, and I was presented with an opportunity to train on the track with the track sprint guys, because they were looking for a man one in the team sprint, which from a physical capacity is very similar to the attributes that are required to be successful at BMX. So basically, it was an opportunity to ride with Sir Chris Hoy, Jason Kenny, like legends of the track cycling world. Mm-hmm. And I basically was like, well, why wouldn't I? I was actually sick at that point of training so hard, and then basically getting injured. So anyway, I took that opportunity, and that was from February through until October of 2011. And I, without sounding sort of horrible or disrespectful, I knew like almost straight away it just wasn't for me. It was it just wasn't enjoyable. Like, I love with BMX how it's split between, it's like 50% is, at the time I spend in the gym is about sort of building the engine, and then 50%, the other 50% on the track, which is just trying to fine tune and work on the technical elements. Whereas when I was on the track, it was literally just like, it didn't matter whether I was in the gym or on the track. It was just all physical. So anyway, I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't really get on with any of the coaches. It was just it's very mundane in comparison to the life that I'd had as a BMX athlete. So then I got back on the BMX, but then it was the off season. So basically, to answer your question, I'd actually made like massive physical gain in the off season from 2010 to 2011. But because I didn't race that whole 2011 season, nobody actually saw that. So then when I came back onto the BMX in 2012, and I'd gone from sort of being, I don't know, maybe just inside the top 20 in the world if I was lucky, to then actually, so we you know, I like planning and prep, you know, I like to plan things and prep things, and we'd had sort of the big five were named. So at the time it was Mark Willers, Sam Willoughby, Connor Fields, Maris, and Joris Daudet. That was, so we you know, I named the big five, and I basically wanted to break into the big five. And then I'd had a World Cup quite early on that I finished second in the time trial, and then was in, like, I won all my races, and then in the final just had a terrible start. And basically I felt like after that race I was in the top five. You know, I'd broken into the top five, and then it was a case of how do I go from being in the big five to actually sort of being at the top of that pile, really. But yeah, I think that, you know, it's an interesting one because a lot of people have asked me that question. Like, I obviously had a hole in my career, and I don't think it was literally, from my standpoint, it was literally that I'd made such big physical, you know, gains over the winter, but then wasn't actually able to showcase that because I didn't race at all. And then everybody sort of put that back to my time spent on the track, racing on the velodrome, and they put a lot of the physical sort of gains down to me riding on the track. Whereas really, if you want me to be perfectly honest,
perfectly honest. Yeah,
I actually got slower from when I got on the track in February. Well, it was in April because I'd been injured with my hand and wrist. And then by the time it got to October, I actually got slower over that period of time. So then October, I started training as I had done as a BMX athlete, and then I did some testing 12 weeks later, and my max power and wattage went, like, you know, skyrocketed after doing 3 weeks back on the BMX. So it's an interesting period, and not a lot of people know too much about it, but I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight.
Well, what I like, so selfishly I like it because not many know about it, and you're talking about it on my podcast. I like that. And the other thing too is what's interesting about that. So like you said, a lot of things in there that I think are super important for my audience, right? Bike racers, athletes, and entrepreneurs, everything in between. Like, one, just the way you're talking about being top 100 in the world, and then being top 20 in the world if you were lucky, and then cracking top 5. Like, just to be clear, that's not normal for most people, right? Like so. I mean, so just, but it's funny, right? How you're talking about it casually. So for me as a psychologist, from a mindset standpoint, I just think that's just one of the cool things about being and working with elite people, is that it's really normal to kind of be at a certain level anyway. And it's really like, okay, because everything's on a continuum, right? So top 100 in the world, most people are like, oh my gosh, but you know, if we're 80th, you're not happy about that. It's pretty much like, you know, top 10, and really of the top 10, it's like, no, I want to be in contention to win every single time I race.
Yeah, and I think being like, I think it's really important to be like honest with yourself. Like, there's no, if I was going to a race and I was getting knocked out in the first round every time, and then somebody says to me, you know, where would you rank yourself in the world, you know, in the world? And I'm like, I think I'm, you know, top 30. I'm like, well, you're obviously not. You get knocked out first round every race, you know. Like, I think for me, it's about, you know, being like, yeah, just being true and honest to where you actually sit, and not actually seeing yourself better than you are or different. Like, it's, you know, like the results of what speak for himself, and you can't really get away from that. No,
you can't. And unfortunately, that's the mental anguish, right, that you deal with when you don't get the results you want. The other thing you said that was important was taking this break. You know, this, and so I'm equating that to the hole in the resume, right? So for people who who go looking for jobs or go back to work after being an entrepreneur or whatever it is, sometimes there is a gap in quote unquote employment. But, it's like, how do you account for this time? We can't prove you were working, but obviously you were working, right?
Yeah.
So
sure.
I just thought that was a kind of a cool thing, how you took that break. What was it like to not essentially race for that amount of time? Because you'd raced your whole life.
Yeah, well, I think the reason that I sort of made the jump initially was the fact that I was just sick of basically working my butt off and then getting injured almost every time I did race. So at the time I thought it was really, it was super healthy for me to actually spend a block of time knowing that I wasn't going to get injured. Because as a BMX athlete, I touch wood, the only time I've been injured is literally from crashing, and then you suffer trauma and have a broken bone. Very rarely, you pick up the odd back niggle or something sort of small, but I've never been injured from training itself. So I knew that period of time that I would spend just training would obviously mean that it's just a huge block of work that I could have underneath me without actually worrying I'm basically just trying to come back from injury, because that's not easy.
No, and you've said a number of times already on this podcast that you've been injured a lot.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother talent, right? Coming back from injury.
Yeah.
So now it's 2012. We're 2011/12. We're back on the scene. We're racing, doing exceedingly well, heading into the 2012 Olympics. And real quick, you're a specialist, right? So you actually, from your peer group, the other competitors, you take on a lot of heat, and even from the press a bit, in that you wouldn't, even when you came back, so to speak, that you weren't racing as much as everyone else. I mean, you very much were specifically racing for the World Cups, the World Championships, and Olympics. So,
yeah.
And that flies against a lot of BMX philosophy, so to speak, which is, and a lot of sports training philosophy, which is part of the training, is actually getting up there and racing and getting those efforts in. So
yeah.
Talk about that.
But,
there's no question, but I just want to, yeah.
So for me, it's quite obvious. So basically, the chances of crashing in training are minimal.
Mm-hmm.
So they do happen, but minimal. And basically, if you look back at whenever I've been injured, it's come from racing. So obviously, every time you race, there's a higher risk of getting injured. And therefore, stepping out onto the track and, trying to win a World Cup or, a major competition is, it's sort of easier to take the risk of basically being injured. So, and also, I just think, if I'm perfectly honest with you, I think that I don't feel like if I was to race as much as all the other guys in the world, like basically, I know every time I line up on that start gate for like a major event, I'm absolutely at the top of my game. Like my preference would be to race sort of every 6 weeks. I love that build up to a race, and I know that when I get to that point, I'm like absolutely, I've peaked for that one event. Whereas to try and sustain that, and I feel like there's a lot of guys that I race that are, say, genetically, more gifted, technically more proficient. However, I feel like they turn up to a race and they're basically just fatigued, and they're not actually, and therefore I'm able to compete with them because I've said on numerous occasions, like I owe my coach Grant a lot. He spends way too much time, trying to get absolutely everything out of us and our on bike ability. But I need to do absolutely everything that I can day in, day out in order to be able to compete with the best guys in the world. and therefore, and I guess by racing 6 times a year, like some guys just couldn't do it. But for me, I feel like I can, I didn't race, I could not race for 9 months, 10 months in the off season. And then I can come out first race of the year, race in Manchester, where that's the most high pressure race that I ever encounter.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a few thousand people expecting me to win.
Just a few thousand? A country?
Yeah. Well, that just the people that are there, and then obviously the athletes I race against have openly, they've said, "Oh, we're racing for second." So you've got all of that to contend with. However, when sort of the chips are down, I'm able to produce what I need to, and therefore, if I wasn't able to deliver what I needed to when I was racing those races, then there would be argument for me personally to say that I need to race more. And also another thing, if I'm honest, Jason, I'm not really interested in turning up to these races to get on the podium. I want to win. The best and most easiest the way of winning is literally just leading the race from start to finish. You just get a great start, lead into the first corner, and then you win the race. So, if you look at the results I've had, whenever I've made a final at a major event, more often than not, I don't know what the stats are, but it'd probably be 60 or 70% conversion. So I haven't made half as many finals as some of the guys that I race, but then my sort of win rate versus final rate is quite strong, and that's because potentially I'm hit and miss, but more often than not I train to win, and if I'm in that final, then I'm usually in an inside lane, and I'll stand a good shot of winning it.
Damn, just like that, people. I train to win. So okay, I think I know, but I'm gonna ask because I don't want to assume. Where does the confidence come from? That's part one. And two, what do you do when it's not there?
Well, the confidence for me comes from it just comes from fact, really. I see it in the training data. I think that initially when I first come back to BMX, I think that we just had the indoor facility built in Manchester, which we had sort of a really, really good timing system put in, and basically that obviously gives us a huge amount of data on a daily basis. And again, data's great if you want to use it in the right way. There's no point having all these numbers just for the sake of it. And initially, for the first probably 2 years, we were collecting huge amounts of data, but we had nothing to compare it against. We didn't know where, doing certain times, on the start ramp or around the track, we didn't know where that would sit us against the rest of the world. So all we could do was actually, just train to, a really high standard, and then go and race. And we found quite quickly that obviously the efforts and the times I was doing in training, I would then go and compete and be at the sort of top end of the sport. So after that, it was super easy for me. I think the confidence comes from the fact that when I'm in, and when I set my mind or have for me, having the desire to do something, and when I choose, or set that goal, and then I have a really strong desire to achieve it. Because I think there's a difference there as well between setting a goal and saying, oh yeah, I'd love to do that, but actually, being able to go above and beyond to try and make that happen. I think that if your desire to achieve something that's really, really strong or high, that the chances of achieving that are, obviously very high. I'll be honest, I turn up, if I know that I've had a great training block leading up to a race, the races that I've won that, and it sounds really arrogant, but it's not, I would never say this to my competitors, that this is just my own beliefs. I know that I'm in good enough physical shape that basically it doesn't matter how well everybody else is doing. I believe that I'm faster than anybody else, and therefore my whole focus and process is really just about delivering me and what I can produce. And I know that if I do that, the chances are, I've got a really, really high chance of being successful.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I've had moments myself like that where, it's funny. You're not only feeling so good. It's like this mix of feeling with knowledge. I guess that's what I like to call, that's where the belief comes from. It's like where that matches up. Like you feel it and you also know it. And I remember being in that sweet spot a few seasons, or a few times during certain seasons where, and yeah, you don't want to come off as arrogant or cocky to your competition, but in your heart, in your mind, and in your whole every sense of your being, it's almost like you have this big secret that you can, that you can only let out when you race, when you compete.
Yeah.
And the pressure isn't about who else is fast or what everyone else is doing. The pressure is like, can I live up to my own standard of performance?
Yeah, and more often than not, like I think that when you're not super confident in yourself and your own abilities, you then do look at other people and you pay more attention to other people and go, oh damn, that they're looking really good, or they whereas the rate, and that's one of the reasons why I've got such huge admiration for Sam Willoughby. He's for those of you that are listening that aren't familiar with BMX, he's an athlete that's achieved huge amounts of success over a vast amount of time. And for me, he's been the level. He set the standard, and he's been so consistent over. He's like the Roger Federer of the BMX world.
Yeah.
And I remember I won the World Cup in Sweden, and then the following World Cup was Argentina, and Sam wasn't going to be there. And I can remember getting there, and I just felt like flat, because I love racing against him, because I know that I have to be absolutely on my A game, and I feel like he would force me to raise my level, and I just loved that competition, and having again the opportunity to race somebody that you've got so much sort of respect for. And I'm not saying that I don't have respect for everybody that I race, but I've always had something like something like I'll always hold so much respect for Sam. He's been somebody that, for me, without him in the sport, I don't feel like I would have been as good as I have been.
Yeah, he's an older, and he was on the podcast probably a few weeks ago, and we were talking about his approach as compared to Maris, who's on the podcast as well. And Maris is like, for a guy who has the nickname The Machine, he's probably the most casual, the most casual competitor I know. He's just like, I don't know. He's definitely, and he does his own thing too. And definitely where he is in the sport, it's changed. So where you are now, how old are you now anyway?
28.
28. Oh, you're just getting into man strength years. Did you know that?
Well, I did, but I'm not feeling it at the moment.
It's okay. It's okay. Like 27 to like 32. Those are like prime man strength years. I promise you.
Right.
Yeah. So the only thing left is just like, aging. I'm
writing these down.
Yeah. Aging decently. For real. I had my best years like 30, 31. For real.
Really?
Yeah. You thought I was younger than I was, but I wasn't, huh?
There's hope for me, yeah.
Oh, totally. There's hope. But the sport's changing, right? So when I got out, there was an older group, and then it skewed younger. So now you're on the top end of things age wise.
Definitely.
So how far ahead? Because you said you like to plan, you like to prepare.
Yeah.
How far ahead is your planning, preparing? How far out are you throwing all of this BMX stuff for yourself now?
It's a tricky one, because it's tricky because of this injury, to be honest. This injury is really so. I'll say that after Rio, I thought that I might do a year or two, and then that would be it. I wouldn't have committed to another Olympic cycle. However, I then got injured. So basically, I've been injured pretty much for 12 months, because I crashed 8.5 weeks before Rio and broke my collarbone, which I know is not a secret, but again, that's not really been touched upon. So I basically spent the 8 weeks leading up to Rio just sort of rehabbing that. That was a bad crash. That was nasty, and I had a really severe concussion. And basically, when I crashed in Rio, it didn't take much, but a slight bump on the head, and then I was knocked out again, just because it was so soon after that previous concussion. So that put pay to that Olympics, and then I needed to have a substantial amount of time off. I got back into training, and then I wasn't cleared basically by the doctors, so I had to have time off. So then I started training. I had 14 weeks of training before I raced the first race of this season, and then I crashed. So I feel like basically in the last 12 months I've done minimal amount of training, and therefore my desire to compete has actually skyrocketed. I really want to compete. So I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't have committed to an Olympic cycle, but I would love to. I'd love to now, but at the same time I'm a little bit sort of up in the air, because I'm obviously quite concerned about this wrist injury having taken so long, and I had an operation again 2 weeks ago, just as an arthroscopy to actually see what's going on in the wrist itself, and then my surgeon's he told me he was going on holiday, and I thought, okay, cool, go away for a week, and turns out he's away for 5 weeks, so I'm a little bit up in limbo at the moment, because until I sit down with him and I know exactly what's going on and how we can move forward, then obviously that's going to put that's going to decide on a lot of things, to be honest.
Well, I think people will be pleased to hear, maybe not some of the other UK riders vying for world championship positions and Olympics positions, but I think the fans and everyone will be pleased to hear that it's you're more open to another Olympic run now. That's what I'm hearing. You're more open to it. You're not.
I'm way more open. And and basically, if my body will allow me to, then that's what I would like to do. But we'll see. We'll see what the medical report is, I guess. And but then even aside from all of that, I would still love to be involved with, certainly with BMX, and that you alluded to that sort of next generation of younger British athletes. I would love to have some involvement with them, and I don't know. I've always been super passionate about trying to make the British BMX program, one of the most successful programs in the world, and I feel like I've done a part of that from my own success, but then I don't know. I still don't feel like that there can be more to be done, and I feel like if I can add, even just from my own experiences and how I set about planning stuff with Grant and trying to pass that on to the next generation.
Wow. So that was my next question, which you kind of answered. So even if we're not racing, or when we stop, how about that? Because it will eventually.
Yes.
Right? No matter whether it's 10 years from now or 2 years from now or whatever. So there will be some involvement with you in the sport on some level.
I would love to. Yeah. And in what capacity, I have no idea. I've got a few ideas of things that I would like to do, but again, and also this new post of sort of an athletes, the athletes commission rep, that's another thing that at the moment I've sort of been doing for probably 12 months plus anyway. But I guess now it's a bit more official. That's something that I've got ideas as to how in my opinion, obviously I would I'm super keen to. I've already had some communication with some of the other riders about how we can move things forward and make the sport better. And whether or not even that side of the sport is something that I find really enjoyable. I have no idea, but either way, same with you. BMX is in your blood, and whilst even if I was just working a 9 till 5, I'd still be doing something with BMX in some capacity.
Right. So what about the 9 to 5 world? Is there anything in that world, the 9 to 5 world, that is even remotely interesting to you from a, I don't know, I guess a normal job standpoint?
Well, I recently opened a coffee shop, which has been a sort of a wake up to the real world.
Well, so that's like, what is the deal with? What is it? I mean, I guess everybody's into coffee, so that's
Yeah.
kind of a given. But specifically, I feel like your generation of rider is very
Yeah.
like. So there's Tori Nyhog,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Canadian Olympian. He's always posting stuff about his coffee stuff, and then Sam Willoughby's got his YouTube show, Cafe Willoughby, and so
I'm trying to get Sam to open a shop.
yeah, he wants to open a shop. He's been talking about it, and then you've actually opened a shop. All right, well, what's the shop, man? We got to get you some business. What's the shop so people can go there?
So the shop's called Common Ground. It's just outside of Manchester, and basically, I've always wanted to do something, but never thought that I would. Certainly not whilst I was competing and racing. And to cut a long story short, I was having dinner. So where I live in, just outside of Manchester, there's a beautiful old market house. So if you go back to sort of the early 1900s, that's where the market itself would have taken place every week. And basically the building's still there, so it's a beautiful old building. And a local businessman bought the building a few years ago, and he basically put sort of communal tables in the middle of the room, and then all around the outside of the building are independent sort of artisan, not restaurants, but basically like food outlets. So there's somewhere that sells like really good steak. There's wood fire sourdough pizza. There's something for everyone, and basically it's completely transformed that area, and basically a unit became available just outside the market, and it's becoming sort of a food hub. So there's several restaurants that have opened around it, and we're one of them. And basically, to be frank, we wouldn't have. We only decided to take it on because of the location and where it sat with what was going on there. And basically, we opened the start of this year, and it's been amazing. We're into our 9th week, so it's new, it's fresh, and that whole sort of welcome to the real world is. It's reality.
It's
but
happening.
It's been, I guess, again with this injury and stuff, it's been a welcome distraction. But just managing. I think even from my standpoint, like managing people, it's been a massive wake up call. Managing people, because my whole life has been, or certainly the last 10 years, has been involved with high performance sport, and everything's very direct. It's very black and white, and to be honest, I'm not really interested in things that I'm doing well. I want feedback on what I'm not doing well, and how we can get better.
Yeah, your employees your employees might not be as interested on what they're not doing well.
Yeah, so I found out quite quickly that, and I think even the delivery of we're not doing that too great, guys. Even the delivery was not perhaps not quite soft enough, shall we say? I've learned, thanks to my better half, Jess. She's reined me in a little bit and made sure that I can't be quite as direct or as I don't know, not critical, because I think it's great to be critical. But for me, I said since day one, I was like, I wanted to open a coffee shop. So you touched on the fact that this new generation BMX athletes, we love coffee. It's because it's like our version of going to the pub.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a day off of training, I will then message the other lads that I train with, and basically we'll meet for a coffee, and we might get some food, might get some lunch. So it's our version. That's how we socialise. We go for a coffee, and it's very sociable. And that sort of that's led me to want to sort of ultimately create somewhere that I would want to go. That's been the whole sort of ethos behind the business itself, is that I don't feel like there is anywhere in Manchester that's producing sort of food to a really good standard and coffee to a really high standard. So I've looked at the Australian coffee culture, and basically, I think that what they do is exceptional, and basically just tried to emulate that and sort of raise the standard of what people expect coffee to be. I think you guys in the US are seeing something similar in the sense of, like, you've got Starbucks and these big chains that have done an amazing job at transforming, or making people aware of coffee. However, like now, if you go to Australia and New Zealand, there is no such thing as a Starbucks or a chain. Everything's independent, and we're seeing that in the UK now. It's a lot more people are choosing to go independent because it's a no-brainer. Why would you go somewhere, or why wouldn't you go somewhere that you can get a much better product for cheaper? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So people in the US love their Starbucks for sure. But and I don't mean no offense against Starbucks. Boy, the Gold Medal Mindset podcast surely took a turn, but that's okay. We can go there. But I feel like the Starbucks is kind of like, in a good way, the McDonald's of coffee, right?
Absolutely.
It normalized coffee, but also took it up a notch, because it's not just this burnt water you drink with breakfast. It's like, I can taste it, and it can give me a kick. But and now, at least in Southern California where I live, same thing. We see a lot of independent shops. A great shop that's around my area, and my area is called Better Buzz, and they support BMX and mountain biking and cycling.
Oh, nice.
Yes, they have a team, and they're rad.
Cool.
Yeah, so coffee's become a thing, and then obviously the whole hipster vibe, like everything's a thing with hipsters.
Yeah.
So it's like craft.
But even that,
craft everything, right?
So like, a lot of the guys that we employ in the shop are sort of hipster, and I was very conscious that initially, we want to make the shop accessible, and we want people to feel welcomed, and I think that naturally that sort of hipster image and vibe can be the opposite. So we've tried to blend, some more sort of, friendly faces that aren't so hipster,
right.
And like even that from a management perspective has been it's interesting to get that.
Well,
be
careful. I mean, because when you open the United States, you got to be careful with some of those comments, because they might, you might be like sued for hipster discrimination, something or other. But no, that's cool to hear. So, and I'm excited about that. So I'm kind of secretly hoping that the World Cup goes back to Manchester, so I can go to Common Ground.
I think that you're one of many. I keep getting messages from people saying, "How far is the shop
because
from the Trading
so
Centre?"
I have two questions, right? I have two questions left, and so typically after every World Championships or World Cup, there's a party, right?
Yeah.
So is your place prepared to handle a World Cup party, after party? One.
Well, we started doing a beer and tacos night on a Friday night. So we've got an alcohol license, and we did it for the first time 2 weeks ago, and we were massively underprepared. It was a big hit, and I think that the BMXers could probably take it up a notch, but I'll be more prepared for that one than I was for a couple of weeks ago.
All right, and I gotta say, that was actually one of my favorite World Cups was Manchester. So I do hope they do go back there. I was very pleased with that city when I was there.
Yeah, I'm glad. I love living here. I absolutely love it.
All right. So last question, and I do appreciate your time. I know it's late over there in the UK, or getting late. So what's one thing, right? Liam Phillips grew up racing a BMX bike. His dad is an entrepreneur of sorts. You're entrepreneuring yourself, and your future's somewhat unknown. But what's one thing you wish every person knew? Not about you, but just for their own self, right? What's one thing you wish every person knew that you think would help benefit them in the world? It's a big question.
It's a massive question, and I feel like it doesn't matter how I answer this, it's not going to deliver. I'll probably think of something. I'll think of something in the next few days and think, damn, that was what I needed to say. I don't know. I've seen just this is the first thing that came into my head when you asked me this question. And I've seen it quite a lot recently online, is that common sense is not that common. And I think that it's very true, because I certainly in regards to the shop and starting that and seeing things, and I understand, obviously I'm very sort of highly driven, and I want things to be the best that they can be, and that's not necessarily, that doesn't mean it has to be the best. It just has to be the best that it can be. You deliver. So all I ask from the guys that work at Common Ground is that they just do the best that they can to deliver, whatever it is that they're doing, whether it be just serving a customer, or whether they're making coffee. Just make it the best that you can, and that's all I can ask. That's all anybody can ask. But yeah, common sense is not all that common.
That's good. That's good. There's a famous guy. His name's Brendan Burchard. He's a speaker, trainer, amazing, kind of, I don't want to say business coach, but business coach and all of the above. But he'll say common sense is not common practice. So you're nailing it. You already living. You're already kind of like, from a mindset standpoint and life practice standpoint, you're already engaged in the right sort of success trajectory. How about that?
Yeah, for me, it's everything I do. I try and everything should be fun, and like all of the guys that I managed to get some really great guys to get involved with the shop that are working there. And I've said from day one, like, I really, really I would never want this place to be somewhere where when they wake up in the morning that they're like, oh God, I've got to go into work today. Like because I feel so lucky that, I'm young, but I've never been in a position where I wake up every day and think, I just wake up and love what I do every single day, and that, for me, I feel super lucky to be in that position. And if I can sort of, if we employ 7 or 8 people that, then give them the opportunity to do that, then I feel like that's worth more than anything for me. It's like, and so far so good. Nice.
Well, that's good. And you are lucky. And I think most people would be well served to have that frame of mind. You don't have to dread going to work.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So.
No, and I think it's like you said, it's not everybody isn't that fortunate, and sort of wish everybody was, really.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole purpose of what I do, and having a podcast like this is to show them different ways they can become fortunate, right? So, like, right, our conversation started off with BMX and, injury, and it's come all the way around to, like, this really cool coffee shop that you own and this other opportunity, and right? Because the story keeps going, and that's, for me, that's like my own selfish, I don't want to say self-interest, because I really believe it for other people, but that's the whole reason why I got into what I got into. It's like, wait, like I've had a good run, such as yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it might have been environment, it might have been my own choices, it might have been a whole bunch of other things, but there's certain things that I'm doing, right? Yeah. To keep it going, that good run.
Yeah.
All of it.
Absolutely.
And so sharing that and talking with other people who are doing the same things and working it the way they know how only helps other people do the same thing, because I believe we all need a little bit more happier people out there.
Yeah.
than what's shown on.
Jess and I, Jess and I, my girlfriend, like we speak quite frequently about stuff like this, and so when I sit back and look at this shop, like a lot of things were sort of coincidental. However, I think that you meet people and you experience things, and you come across things at points in time and in your life, and it's then up to you whether you decide to like do anything about it. So this shop, I was having dinner next door to the shop, and Jess and I basically said, "Oh wow, it would make a great location for a coffee shop." And it was only then that she when we got home, went online, and she looked. So there was no like advertising, there was nothing on this shop. It was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And she just went online, because the owners of the restaurant said, "Oh, it's been empty for 18 months. We thought that somebody was sort of taking the lease on, and I don't know what's happened with it." And then she looked online, and on that same day, even though there's no advertising, that same day, that property came back up for tender. And we were sort of like, okay, you can say that it's meant to be, but at the same time, like we'd sort of acknowledged the fact that would make a great location. She then took the time, albeit 2 minutes, but she took the time to just have a quick search and saw that it was available. So I think that when you do see things that you believe in and could potentially work, you just got to action it.
Yeah, and it's so funny that 2 minutes, but I literally was having a conversation with a client the other day, and we were talking about 2%. Like, it's not always these big, huge changes. It's like 2%, 2%, 2%.
Yeah.
And the next, and you know what 2% is coming out of the gate. You know what 2% is on your time. You know what 2% is. I mean, that's the difference between getting cut off or winning. It literally is that difference. I spend a whole year. I spend 12 months trying to find the 100th of a second to the bottom of the start ramp. So from London to Rio, we basically, I improved by 400ths to the bottom of the start ramp in a whole Olympic cycle. And it does take it takes that amount of time to find it, but it's worth it because that's the difference between being out front and being cut off. That's it. And so, if you work for Liam Phillips at Common Ground, watch out when he enters the building. Make sure, employees, that your stuff is on point. No, I'm just playing. I'm sure you just, it's nothing wrong with having high standards and high priorities, and I think a lot of people don't always recognize them, acknowledge them, or sometimes are scared to raise them and hold themselves or others accountable to them for fear of what other people might think. So I applaud you for that in and of itself. And with
Thank
that, yeah, no problem, man. Well, say hi to the family. And
I will.
If I don't see you on the road, then, our paths will cross either way. I know that. But Thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thanks for reaching out, and I hope that provided a small insight to you and your followers.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, also, I almost forgot. How can people find you? Where?
So all of my social media platforms are Liam Phillips 65.
Okay, at Liam Phillips 65 and Common Ground.
And Common Ground, yeah. All of those are Common Ground ALT. So it's in a town called Altrincham. So everything's Common Ground ALT.
Common Ground ALT. There we go. So when the World Cup, the BMX World Cup circuit goes back to Manchester, the after party will be at Common Ground.
There we go. It's already booked in.
Only,
the World Cup's not
only if Liam wins, though.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, Jason, I actually said that if we had a World Cup this year, I said after last year, because you interviewed me straight after that race, and I said to Grant that week after, I said, if there's another World Cup here next year, I'm out. I'm not doing it. I cannot do it. No more. The pressure just gets more and more and more every year, and I mean it's an amazing feeling, obviously, but it's also just huge relief to get it done, get it boxed off, because it's how many BMX races do you go to where if BMX is so unpredictable, and you're basically being put in a position where if you finish second, everybody says, "What's happened? What happened? Why didn't you win?" It's a strange situation, but thankfully so far I've been on the right side of it.
Right, So we need to say that you've been undefeated every time a World Cup has been.
Yeah.
There. So it right, and the funny thing is, yes.
It's been a very, 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 very happy stomping ground.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come without stress.
Right. And a second place anywhere else in the world is like, hey man, good job.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a big pat on the back. But not there. But
there you go.
There we go. It's all part of it.
It's all part. That's what you signed up for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where
exactly.
we go. All right, man. Well, be good.
All right.
Be great. Be great.
Appreciate it.
And yeah, we'll talk soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Jason.
Thanks for taking the time to mine for gold on the Gold Medal Mindset podcast. Let's keep the conversation going on Twitter at RealDrJRich or on the web at drjasonrichardson.com. That's drjasonrichardson.com. Take care and have a great day. Gold Medal Mindset is brought to you courtesy of IPD Seminars, motivating the motivated with a 6-hour intensive training from leaders in business, sport, and life. Make an impact, live with purpose, and fulfill your destiny. Learn the mindset and best practices to crush any limit. Visit ipdseminars.com for more information. We also like to thank Life Advantages Prep, making school not suck for high school kids already immersed in sport, tech, the arts, or whatever their passion may be. For more information on winning at LAP, please visit lifeadvantagesprep.com.